Let's take a look at some charts on Stellar for the latest article on Brave New Coin. So looking at the total asset holders, which is this orange line, and the total supply circulating, which is the blue fill, we can see that historically the amount of people holding XLM is certainly at an all-time high, thanks to 3 airdrops from blockchain.com, Coinbase, and Keybase. So although they recently burned the SDF, the Stellar Development Foundation, they burned 55 odd million Stellar. It wasn't circulating, so it shouldn't really have a massive impact on price immediately or ever. It just wasn't ever in the picture. But you can see certainly more and more people are holding Stellar. If we look at total transactions per day and average transaction value, so the line here is transactions, the fill is average transaction values. What you see on most blockchains, as transactions increase, average transaction values decrease. This speaks to little microtransactions that are happening on these chains, mainly because the fees are 0 or very, very minute relatively to other chains. What I don't know is why the transactions per day has ballooned since October. I was unable to find that out. You can see the token burn here. This is what I think is the token burn, where there's this massive transaction and the average transaction values skyrocketed, highest ever. Not necessarily organic, because it wasn't people moving stuff around, it was the SDF moving non-circulating coins around. So that'll inflate values, it'll inflate metrics. You have to know that obviously looking at this, but if you're just looking at this, taking at face value, you're like, oh wow, average transaction value spiked. This is super bullish, right when transactions spiked. But overall, these two aren't related in my mind. They might be correlated, but they're not related. So yeah, I'm not really sure why these transactions are spiking. I just couldn't find that out. It didn't really make sense, especially because if we look at active addresses, which is the fill here, versus the NVT, which is the line. If we talk about the active addresses, you can see they're coming to multi-year lows historically. Now you can see the spikes in the addresses here. That was when they had the weekly inflation rewards. So the distribution for the rewards would spike the active addresses every week. Again, just looking at this face value, not knowing what's going on, you might say, oh wow, what's this weird spiking all the time, right? But if you know, like, oh, these are inflation reward distributions, it makes a lot more sense. So the NVT is at an all-time low, and that may be partially related, again, to this SDF 50 million Stellar moved. Sorry, I keep saying million tokens. It's actually billion tokens. 55 billion tokens that were burned. It's going to alter all the metrics here, so it's hard to really know what NVT is, looking at just relative to where it's been. Now, historically, Stellar has had one of the highest NVTs compared to anything. So to see it come to a low here is a bit suspect, especially as active addresses are sort of at a yearly low. So, you know, taking this at face value and looking at it versus relative to other coins, it's really hard to know and understand that maybe, okay, the NVT here may not be as useful as other coins. So if I was looking at this in a vacuum, I'd say, wow, NVT is at an all-time low. That should be super bullish for any coin. But knowing what they did and how it affects on-chain values is going to alter the NVT here. And obviously, active addresses dropping, certainly not bullish. So there's a bit of a divergence there. Active addresses, now if active addresses were up and NVT was at an all-time low and transactions were up, then we could say, oh, okay, this is clearly a bullish picture. But there's a bit of a garbly mess here on the on-chain metrics, saying like, you know, active addresses are down, but transactions are up. So fewer people are making more transactions, or one entity is making a lot of transactions, whatever it is. It just doesn't paint a clearly bullish picture. Moving to technicals, if we look at my favorite stuff, the 50 and the 200 EMA. So the 200 EMA is the red, the 50 is the green. These horizontal bars are volume profile of the visible range, basically at what price did how much volume occur. And I always like to look at RSI, which is the relative strength index, the momentum of price. And historically, Stellar's actually had one of the longest bearish crosses on the 50-200. It's going on 600 days almost. So if anything, there's some definite bearish exhaustion just simply based on time. Typically for crypto, these things don't last 2+ years as far as like the bear markets or bull markets. Now, Stellar might be a little different because they keep airdropping tokens, and I think in general that is negative pressure on price. There's a selling pressure there that's constant. People get the tokens, arguably most of them just sell them for something else, USD or BTC or whatever. So that certainly hasn't helped them. And you can see historically in these 600 odd days that price has been below the 200 for most of that. So if price can get above the 200, if we can get the golden cross, then it's a different story. And it looks like it might happen this year within the next 6 months, certainly. One thing I was looking at was these previous all-time highs, these previous local highs even. You can see how it sort of created this resistance zone, how it was previously support, and it just sort of like petered out, went down through it without any reaction, and now it's resistance. So if I can get above this zone, above the 200, likely see some more bullish momentum here. VPVR, not much help because most of the volume, at least on Poloniex, historically was in the previous range. So you have to zoom in on this to like really see what's going on. And then RSI doesn't really show any bullish or bearish divergences here. Looking at the cloud, again, mostly it's been below the cloud over the past 2 years. Certainly not bullish. It had this brief period, this chance for a bull flag thing that broke down below the cloud. So bearish it went, and then it had a chance to break above the cloud again. It didn't. It has another chance now. It's going to need some time. Probably till the end of February, the end of March even, we'll know, okay, this is finally has another shot at some bullishness. You know, if it gets above the 200, above that level I was suggesting on the previous chart, then we can say maybe it's got a chance. But as it stands here, it's very indeterminate, very no trade zone-y as far as the trend is concerned. And then looking at Stellar BTC Pair, it's had a nasty downtrend here since early 2019. It's almost been just straight greater than 45-degree angle down. However, in the past 6 months, it's been basing at this really high volume zone. Again, this might be a little skewed because it's on Polo. Most of the users on Polo were pre-2018. So most of their volume is going to be pre-2018. So it's really hard to take any of this completely at face value. But in the next few months, as price has a chance to return above cloud, get above this volume zone, we may see the 5200 flip. We may see some bullish momentum, at least to 1600 sats. Now, previously in late 2017, you can see as soon as the cloud flipped and then we got the golden cross almost at the exact same time, it was off to the races. Immediate bullish reaction. So that would be what I would be looking for if I was looking for a bullish entry, a long entry into Stellar. I'd be waiting on this golden cross. I'd be waiting on the cloud signals to be clear, no indeterminate, be waiting for price to be above this previous volume supply zone if I was looking for bullish momentum going forward through 2020.